Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Wayne's public hearing on annual town meeting warrant articles. This is a re-recording of a public hearing that was held on Tuesday, May 18th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. Remotely. So tonight's public hearing, we're going to be talking a little bit about the budget. We're going to talk about items that are in the budget and things that are not in the budget. Items that increased over $2,000 over the last year. The mill rate, the tax impact, the budget effect on the taxpayer, so the tax impact on the taxpayer, and the breakdown of the tax bill. Other items that we're going to be just chatting a little bit about are the non-budgetary warrant articles, voting information, and then we'll have an opportunity for question and answers. In this slide, I wanted to just show you, point out to you each department's budget from the current fiscal year, 2020 to 2021, and then the proposed budget, 21 to 2022. And the amount changed and the percent changed. So I'm not going to go over each budget. However, I just want to point out to you a couple items in this table to show you kind of what's in and what's out. So if you look under the debt service, that's where we pay back our bonds. So as you know, we've been pretty aggressive in, on our roads in the last couple of years. And we've originally we borrowed $300,000 a year around to pay for the reconstruction of roads and paving. Those were 5-year bonds, and each bond, anyway, so a couple of years ago now, we were at the peak of the budget, the high point of this curve. So now every year for the last couple of years, we've been paying down our debt. So this year is no different. This year, we're proposing a $65,000 decrease in our debt service because we're paying down another bond. So that's why you see a almost $47,000, 47% decrease in the budget. Now, inversely, you'll see a big increase right here under the capital reserve item. Now, there's a couple of reasons why there's a big increase, and we'll get into that a little later. But what I wanted to just quickly point out to you is that the increase is directly correlated with the decrease in the debt service. And that's because as part of our road plan, we decided that we would pay down the debt. As we're paying down our debt, we would increase our capital reserve funding for roads. The overall tax impact of our budget this year from last year is 7.5% over last year's, or $97,000 more. So what's in the budget in terms of increases? So as we just talked a little bit about, we talked a little bit about the road reconstruction. And so the biggest increase in our budget this year is the increase in our road reconstruction paving capital reserve fund. Last year we budgeted $95,000. This year we budgeted $160,000. That is a $65,000 increase at 40%. Other items in the budget this year are the feasibility studies and consultant fees. The town is looking to hire a consultant, an architect, engineer, and firm to help us make decisions about building a new town office / fire station. So this consultants, what they're going to do is look at our existing facilities, determine whether or not their space, what kind of conditions they're in, what needs to get fixed in them. And then they're going to take a look at what we need for space and programming space for now and in the future for our departments, like the fire department, what is needed for the fire department, what is needed for the town office. And then they're going to determine whether or not they can do what we need to do at our current location, any of our current locations. And they're going to give us some estimates about how much and alternatives, determine whether or not we can do what we want to do at our current locations. And during this process, there'll be some public input sought. So stay tuned for more. The fire truck capital reserve fund is an increase of $20,000. Last year and the years before, we only budgeted $30,000. This year we're budgeted $50,000. It's a 40% increase. The oldest fire truck right now is, I believe, an 85 fire truck. The average useful life of a fire truck is about 40 years. So coming 2020, 25, we should be replacing that fire truck to keep it on track. The recreation budget, along the Rad Rec Center health insurance, we have an employee down there that is no longer allowed to be on his insurance with his parents, and he saved us some money in the last year, and by doing that, but he's entitled to our health insurance program through the town, and so that's what this line item is right here, $13,000. The intergovernmental budget and the county tax, that is the county taxes, which pays for the jail, the sheriff's department, the general operation of the county. That's a 5% increase over last year. One of the reasons for the increase is that if you haven't heard, is that the county, used to get rural patrol coverage from the state police. That fell through due to state budget cuts, and now the sheriff's department's been having to hire deputies to replace that coverage. The gravel budget and the road budget is a increase from by $5,000, which is a 20% increase, and that's because during the pandemic, we decided to cut back and rescind quite a bit of our, I shouldn't say rescind, but just cut back some of our expenses to limit the budgetary impact and the tax impact of the budget over last year to you. And same with the outside contracting. We did the same thing there. And we once again, we just wanted to try to prevent we didn't know what was going to happen. So we were concerned that we wanted to mitigate any possible tax impacts as possible. But now, as things are starting to get better, we really need to put that back into our budget. The fire chief officer stipend increased to $4,500 more than last year, which is a 43% increase. The fire chief's stipend hasn't increased in years, and that's very much a credit to them. They've worked really hard. They deserve this increase. They're essentially volunteers, and they put in a lot of time. And despite the small stipend amount that they get, and with that being said, there's a lot of additional responsibilities like Department of Labor updates, OSHA, and other NFPA standards that they have to keep up with, and they do a good job at that. Capital reserve budget for fire ponds. That's our rural dry hydrants. You'll see them on down several different roads in town. We have one on Main Street. We have one on Lord Road. We have one on North Wayne Road, Old Winthrop Road, and a few other places in town. They need to replace two of them, one on North Wayne Road and one on the Lord Road. They're just going to relocate them due to their age and some maintenance issues. They need to replace them. So under the roads budget, the highway and sidewalk plowing, these are just contractual obligations. Highway plowing is a 5-year contract, and this is the last year of that contract. So it's just a 2% increase. The sidewalk plowing is a 3-year contract. This is year 2. Once they increase up to this level, they will stay the same for the next year. This is associated with plowing the sidewalks in the winter, particularly the new segment. The general admin insurance, this is just a general property and casualty insurance, unemployment insurance, workers' comp insurance. Appears that we might have been under budget on this item a little bit, and so there's an increase there associated with that. The general admin legal budget, this was one of those cuts that we made in an effort to minimize budget impacts and tax impacts, and trying to find savings. And we cut back quite a bit in this legal line. We have a new code officer, and we're starting to enforce some of our zone ordinances. So there will be an increase there, projected increase in that line item. Fire operations. This one, if you saw a $2,000 decrease table, we decreased our fire personnel budget by $2,000, and that's because we contracted with a company to test our hose. Now, the fire department has to test all its fire hose, not just like, one length of it. It has to test all of it. They have to take it off the trucks. Then they have to pressurize each hose and determine whether it's safe or not. Once again, that's a Department of Labor standard. We do that with the ladders every year. We do that with our pumps and our pump trucks, the trucks. So this really is a little bit misleading. This is a wash because there's a savings on the other end on the fire personnel side. And it's really time consuming and labor intensive. And so it was seen as by the general population or the fire department that it was be best served if we went with this company. The roads budget under brush and tree removal, there's a $2,000 increase. This was just another cut that we, once again, it goes back to minimizing budget impacts and tax impacts on residents pre-pandemic. We do have an inventory of trees that need to get cut. They're hazard trees, and these are some big trees, and they're not cheap. So the mill rate, you could see an effort, like I told you, when we were building the budget this last year, we tried to minimize impact to prevent any hardships on anybody during the pandemic. Now we're trying to pull back into our regular programs and begin to move forward on some of our projects. And so the proposed budget is the mill rate is more than it was than last year. And this is with the effect on the taxpayers, the budget and the mill rate. So you can see it, last year was 17.96 mill rate, and this year it's a 18.28 mill rate. It's a 32-cent change. The median home value, I was just actually looking at the U.S. Census data, and I believe what I saw was the median home value of town of Wayne is about $202,000. So the average, or basically the median home value, or that pretty close to the average in town, is about $64 budget increase. This table here shows the breakdown in your budget. We're legally required to actually put this on your tax bill, so you'll see this on your tax bill. But anyways, I always like showing this because when you're writing your checks out to the town of Wayne, just so you know, the town of Wayne writes a big check every month to the RSU. And so that 61% of your taxes actually go to the school, and then the municipal operations 32%, and the county is 6%. The non-budgetary warrant articles are, we have a few articles here that are not affected by the budget, but they are nonetheless on the warrant. And last year we tried to minimize these articles because of the lack of town meeting, but we decided this year that we would open them up because of we just needed to get these on the these changes approved. We've held some public hearings on these issues, and so this one here is a change to our zoning ordinance, and both the select board and the planning board recommended it. So the big changes here are really was we wanted to update our zoning ordinance to really comply with the state of Maine guidelines for municipal shoreline zoning. And so that's where the big changes are. If you look at our proposed ordinance changes, you can go to our website, or you could come to the town office and we can print off a copy. The other changes that we made were clarifying minimum lot size and setback requirements for residential structures on aquifers. And that was just something that we noticed as we were working through the ordinance this year. We had some issues that came up, arose about whether or not the setback requirements are for structures on an aquifer. The other area of concern was setback and height requirements for fences. That was just another enforcement issue that we had, and we wanted to try and bring some clarity to it. And that's what the ordinance, we made some changes to that to reflect that. We made some revisions to the land use table to clarify permit requirements for various uses in all zones. And that was something that our new code officer recommended. And so we are trying to update our ordinance to make it more clear for him so that he can do his job better. The proposed changes in the zoning map include showing acreage of wetlands. That becomes a factor in our in how we treat some of our permanent underlying zones for aquifers, and matching the map with language in the land use ordinance. So show the town, the next non-budgetary warrant articles, we make some changes to the mobile home park, recreational vehicle park, and campground ordinance. So all we did here was just that we had an issue with one of our campgrounds, and we wanted to make some changes to it, and we were looking to do see if it could help us with a problem. And we realized how old it was, and we asked our code officer to look at it, and then we actually even sent it off to our campgrounds to look at, and they came back with a couple changes, and that's all we're doing right here is just trying to make it comply with state standards, and the select board and the plan board agree to those changes. The changes are actually pretty de minimis. Actually, they're not really that complicated. once again, you could see the changes on our website. Shall the town adopt the Warrant ordinance? The select board has implemented a regulation requiring a 20-foot navigable channel free of boats in the inlet facing the yacht club. So all that says there is just basically that the town adopted a Warrant ordinance. There's been some confusion about whether or not it's the state recognizes it, and whether that we should be in the business of having a Warrant ordinance. And so the select board has asked the voters to inform us whether or not we should be in that business, and whether they should either ratify it or not. The next warrant, non-budgetary warrant article is the ordinance exemption eligible active duty military personnel from vehicle excise tax. And that's pretty descriptive. You don't really have to get into the weeds on this. It's pretty much self-explanatory. So if you're an active duty military personnel and you live in Wayne, and you have a car and you wish to register it, you could be exempt from paying excise. And we only have about 1 or 2 active duty military personnel in town. And so that the budgetary impact of this is going to be really, really de minimis, really, really minor. The select board's recommending it, and no other committee was really involved in adopting this ordinance. So there was no dissension, or anybody, the budget committee didn't review it, or the planning board. This was an ordinance that was passed around towns probably about 8 or 9 years ago, and Wayne has just been slow to adopt it. I think it was probably likely just because there's so little active duty military personnel in town. Some of the towns along the coast by the shipyard or Brunswick, and other places that have large populations of active duty military, they were really quick to jump on this. The voting information, we just wanted to highlight to you that absentee ballots are available at the town office now, and you can vote at for the school budget validation vote, the election of town officers, and a secret ballot referendum on Tuesday, June 8th, 2021, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Lad Rec Center. If you have any questions about this public hearing or the contents of this public hearing, feel free to call me at my town office number, or email me at my town office email, or stop by the town office. And that's it. Thank you and have a great day.